Hey everyone. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, I was at an event and out of the corner of my peripheral, I saw someone and I was like, oh my God, that's Zoe Harcombe. And went over and introduced myself. Now, I've been a fan of Zoe Harcombe for a very, very long time, years and years. She is incredible. Her mind is amazing. And her work on diet, nutrition, and health is unsurpassed. All she cares about is facts and statistics. That's it. She doesn't care about an agenda one way or another, just the facts. Her website is filled with information on diet. And I wanted to pick her brains for this interview on Ozempic and weight loss and calories and carbs, because she's got it all figured out based on actual scientific data. And this, I think, can't be drummed home enough. If asparagus had more nutritional value than liver, she would be screaming it from the rooftops. As an ex-vegetarian myself, as well as her, it is inherent within me to not particularly want to eat meat. And all Zoe does is look at the data. She is incredible. I love her. And I hope you find this interview fascinating. Yes, it's going to go against a lot of the conventional information that we receive in mainstream media, but we all know they lie. And again, she has no agenda here whatsoever. She just focuses on the facts. That's all. I love Zoe Harcombe. I think she's a lot of fun. She also, and I just really like lovely people, by the way. She is a lovely human being. She's very funny. She also has this really lovely husband. And I'm thinking I love him a little bit more than her now, because he was so helpful and he's such fun as well. So I might just run away with him. I was going to run away with Zoe. She doesn't know this, but I was. But now I think I'll run away with him. Maybe I'll run away with both. And even more fun fact, she actually lives really close by. Just is such an incredible coincidence. So anyway, I hope you like the interview. I'll leave all her information in the description bar. And again, if you really like this, and I hope you do, let me know, because I would love to get her back on and she can perhaps answer some of your questions that you have on diet and health or anything like that. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the interview. Zoe Harcombe. Oh, see you next time. Bye-bye. Zoe Harcombe, thank you so much for just being absolutely wonderful and doing this interview with me. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. You've no idea. So for anyone that doesn't know you or isn't familiar with you, if you could just give me a little bit about your background and why you're so fabulous.
Okay, oh gosh, why? Why am I different? I guess because I just don't trust anything, and I've never really trusted anything. Most children at sort of age 3 say, "Oh, why mustn't I stick my finger in the fire, and why mustn't I do this?" And then I don't know what happens to so many people that they just stop that questioning, and I just didn't stop it. And I just kind of don't trust things. So if somebody says, I don't know, the world is on fire and we're all going to die next year or something, I kind of want to research it and see if that actually is the case. And I became very fascinated in health as a teenager. My brother developed type 1 diabetes when he was 15, I was 13, and suddenly your beloved big brother is injecting himself with this thing called insulin, and I was trying to help him with that. And then carbohydrates became a big sort of thing in the house, and the family diet just sort of changed overnight. Then went up to Cambridge University. I did maths. I didn't have a sort of medical kind of doctor background. Never wanted to be a doctor. I can't even watch Casualty. I faint at the sight of somebody cutting their finger. So that was never going to work out. So I was doing maths, but kind of in parallel. I was just fascinated by the fact that my mum was starting to bring home sort of low-fat margarines and unusual products and drinks that only had 1 calorie in them. And it's kind of, what's all going on here? This is all a bit weird. And then I was sort of the generation that you didn't have any obesity in your class at school. There was maybe one child. I remember the one child in our class. He was called Graham. I won't give his surname. But then it just sort of seemed to be exploding, and it seemed to be exploding in parallel with all this let's go low fat and let's do all these other clever things. So I kind of had a proper career. I went into management consultancy. I've been really fortunate to travel the world with my career. I worked for Mars, Big Food. I've worked for SmithKline Beecham, Big Drugs. So I've worked for all the organisations that I now tend to critique, shall we say. Then about 2010, I was working for I was in Wales by that point. I'd met my Welsh husband, married, moved to Wales. I worked for the Welsh Development Agency. I'd worked for Newbridge Networks before that. I worked for Welsh Water, and then got the opportunity to leave and do what I really wanted to do. And I'd always just sort of had this passion for diet and health. So left the corporate world 2010, started looking at diet and health. I'd written a couple of books by then and wrote a couple more books, and then started doing this sort of Monday newsletter. Crikey, back in 2010. So I've done over 760 now Monday notes, and a Monday note will take an academic article and it will kind of dissect it so that you don't have to bother. So when somebody says, oh, look, whole grains are really healthy, or red meat causes cancer, I dissect that so that you don't have to worry about it. So that's what I do now. So I hope that's kind of me and my background in a bit of an intro.
It is. And also, I don't think people understand as well how difficult it is to dissect those kind of studies. They are horrific. I've seen some of them. I do not understand a word any of them are saying. And you make it so that it is a simple process to understand what all that nonsense is and just get to the kind of gist of it.
Oh, that's really kind, actually. I mean, I love doing it. I tend to only do ones that I'm interested in. So, in nutrition, we have what we call population studies, which is where you just study a population over time. So, one of the most famous population studies looks at nurses in America. And they've been following these nurses in America since about 1976. So they start off with, I don't know, 80,000 nurses. They ask them, what's your BMI? Do you smoke? What do you eat? Do you exercise? All of this kind of stuff. And then they follow them for loads of years. And then they say, oh, look, the ones who smoke tend to get lung cancer. That's kind of something we know now. But then they do other stuff where they say, oh, the ones that eat nuts and lentils tended to have better health outcomes than the ones who ate burgers and fizzy drinks. It's like, yeah, but it's way more than that. There's what we call confounders. The people eating nuts and lentils, those are expensive products. They tend to be more affluent, they tend to be better educated, and they say, oh, we adjust for that kind of thing. No, you can't adjust for the whole person. The whole person who is super healthy and has access to healthcare, particularly in the US, got children called Tarquin and Olivia and that kind of thing. And, the other poor couple who are very, very obese and don't have access to healthcare and aren't educated and don't have a great job and are really struggling to make ends meet and can't afford cashews, but can afford the buy one, get one free in McDonald's and KFC every day. It's a completely different person. And those are what dominate nutrition. So when they come out and say red meat causes cancer, whole grains are great, that's the kind of study that they're talking about. So I've done a lot of dissections of those, but I could do those in my sleep now. And I kind of think if I'm getting bored doing those, the readers who've been with me for a long period of time kind of get a little bored as well. So when there's a really big one, like red meat causes diabetes, which is so bonkers, it's difficult to even know where you start on that one. Diabetes is a condition of glucose. There's no glucose in red meat. Red meat has no impact on your glucose level whatsoever. It's just bonkers. When that comes out, okay, I have to do one of those. But mostly I'm just trying to look into, I don't know, the big things that you see on other podcasts, like seed oils. Are they bad for you or good for you? And what are the other big debates that we have? Should everybody be on statins? Should we worry about our cholesterol? Should we be on a low-fat diet? Do calories matter? All that kind of stuff, which I know we're going to unpack in the next hour. So go wherever you'd like to go next.
Well, I thought the first place to go, just because it's such a ridiculously hot topic at the moment, is just to start with what your thoughts are on Ozempic or Mounjaro, whether you think it is this beautiful miracle or maybe it's something a little less wonderful.
Wow, yeah, good question. Okay, so a bit of backstory. Having been doing this for as long as I've been doing this, I've seen other diet drugs come and go. And I did a Monday post on this over the summer. I did 2 notes, in fact. And the starting point was how many previous diet drugs have been withdrawn? And they get withdrawn over time. Some get withdrawn very, very quickly because it becomes very quickly apparent that they're causing harm, and some take a bit longer. So one of the ones I remember quite well, I think it was around 2013 maybe, a drug called sibutramine, which was also called Reductil, was withdrawn. And it was causing an increase in heart disease, basically heart attacks, heart damage, heart failure, all these other things. It did have an impact on weight, but it was just so harmful. People had to say, look, we've got to stop this because it's just too harmful. Even though it's doing some good, we just can't make this available anymore. And of course, people who were on it at the time were absolutely devastated because they only saw the benefit. They didn't realize what it was doing inside. So the starting point for me, for these, as a group of drugs, they're called GLP-1s, but you're right to call them what we know, which is Ozempic, Mounjaro. Some people call them fat jabs, some people call them skinny jabs. And they worry me because we've got evidence of harm already. So I think it's something like 80 odd deaths in the UK already. In any other circumstance, that drug would be pulled from the market. But it hasn't been pulled from the market because this is really seen as the holy grail in obesity. There is so much money behind them. It's kind of like they're too big to fail already. They're loved by too many people already. It just scares me. And having said I think they will be withdrawn, I'm actually starting to get to the point where I'm thinking, well, maybe they won't be. Maybe no matter how much harm they do, the idea will be, well, on balance, they're doing more good than harm, because think about how much obesity costs the NHS, and it's better that we fix that. Now, the drug companies have already done the studies to show what happens when you stop these drugs. And so they had a group of people who were on these drugs, and then they do what they do call a randomized controlled trial. So they say, right, you half stay on the drug, you half go on to a placebo. And the idea is you don't know which one you're on. Well, you'll know within 24 hours, because the ones who are on the drug, they carry on not having any appetite, losing weight, feeling, like they found the holy grail. And then the other group, the appetite comes back, and it comes back with knobs on, and they regain all the weight and then some. And of course, what they've lost along the way is muscle, lean tissue, and then what they go and gain back is fat. So people are either going to need to stay on these for life, which I don't think they're going to be able to do, either from a cost perspective or because the body will adjust to them. The body adjusts to all drugs. So we don't know yet how long it's going to be before the body overcomes this suppression of appetite. Might be 2 years, might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, but it's going to happen at some point. And then the appetite comes back and they don't work anymore. And then what happens? Or people just get too sick. So in the trials, 15% of people stop taking the drug. Now imagine it, you're on this drug all your life, you've wanted to lose weight. Here you are on a drug where you actually do lose weight, and you stop taking it voluntarily because you feel so ill. How bad do you have to feel to stop taking a drug that is helping you lose the weight that you've always wanted to lose? So I absolutely understand why people are drawn to them, but they worry me.
I find it a fascinating topic because it is hailed as a miracle. Everyone seems to be on it. Celebrities who do not need to lose weight are on it and are reaching all-time lows in terms of how they look body-wise. And you also touched on it as well about the muscle loss. I don't think people are realizing the extent of what that does to the body. It's a metabolically active tissue, and losing that. And as we get older anyway, we naturally lose muscle each year, right? Unless we do something to maintain it. And every pound of muscle we lose, we regain that as fat.
Yeah.
That's worry.
Yeah. It's very serious, actually. It's very serious. And as you say, everybody is on them. Now, if someone is absolutely determined to go on them, apart from the fact you could have an incident, a harmful incident, very, very quickly. There was a poor nurse in Scotland, first jab, second jab, I don't know, died. You could be really unlucky in this Russian roulette and have a really bad reaction straight away. Let's assume that you don't. Let's hope that you don't. Then I would say, look, you've got to use these things wisely and use them to retrain your eating habits. So this idea that you carry on eating biscuits and cake and whatever and just be able to have a little piece of cake instead of the whole cake, that's got to go out of the window. Secret of a person who's been the same size for 25 years and it's a, small size. I don't eat cake. I don't eat biscuits. I haven't eaten biscuits or cake this century. It really is a myth that slim people who don't crave food just have a little bit and then can leave the rest. No, this stuff is made to be addictive. So use these drugs on as low a dose as you can for as short a period as you can to completely retrain your eating. And we'll get into sort of what is a healthy diet, but in a nutshell, it's going to be eat real food. Processed food is now out of your consideration set. And then that real food really has to be managed in carbohydrate. The more carbohydrate you eat, the more difficult you're going to find it to control cravings, control your weight and your metabolic health generally.
As we move into, because this just reminds me of something, as we move into the nutrition side of thing and calories, many moons ago, I remember seeing the adverts for the shakes that you would drink. You'd have one for breakfast, one for lunch, and a healthy meal in the evening. And I always remember back then, and I would have been a small child, maybe 10, something like that. I remember thinking, if you knew how to have a healthy meal, you probably wouldn't need the 2 diet drinks to begin with, which I found quite ironic. But there you go.
Yeah, and those liquid diets, the real power of those liquid diets was they took away the choice about what to eat. So people who wanted to lose weight would sort of wake up each morning and say, right, today I'm going to be good. And then they'd have in their mind what their idea of good was. And for some people, good was I'm going to eat 400 calories, or I'm only going to eat salad and apples or something. We have really crazy ideas, but we just sort of got this idea in our head. And then the minute you eat something that you don't perceive as good or wasn't on your list for that day, then everyone's like, oh, I've just blown it today. I'm just going to eat everything, including the kitchen sink, and then I'll get back on it tomorrow. So the power of the liquid diet, when those Cambridge diet things came in, was it takes away your choice of what shall I eat today. Because you wake up in the morning, you have a shake. Lunch, you have a shake. Mostly at the beginning, people then had a shake in the evening as well. And your body will actually get you into a sort of starvation mode, which people didn't realize at the time. It was actually putting people into ketosis quite quickly because they were so low in calorie. I seem to remember the original Cambridge diet was something like 110 calories per sachet. And I think it was 3 for women and 4 for men. So you'd be having between 330 and 440 calories a day. Well, within a few days, you would be in ketosis. You'd have, to have that terrible period of just feeling hungry. If you could get through that, if you actually had the willpower to get through those first few days, you would actually get into ketosis. And then you'd be losing body fat quite quickly and actually not feeling hungry. But there are other ways of getting into ketosis that don't involve 300 calories of processed milkshakes with soy and sucrose and everything else that's quite horrific.
So speaking of calories then, so I grew up believing if you wanted to lose weight, calorie counting is the way to go. It's everywhere. It's still today, I think, pretty much most diets base their diet around the fact that you are just restricting calories. So from someone that does this for a living and knows all about calories, is calorie counting the way to go? And if it isn't, then what are our options if we want to be lean?
Okay, yeah. Is it the way to go? No. I also fell for it. So as a teenager, when, people around you kind of thing of, oh, I don't know. I mean, the craze has always just been there. I mean, since long before me, 1960s or whatever, Twiggy was, let's all look skinny kind of thing. And there were books back then that said, if you want to lose a pound of fat, you just cut back by 3,500 calories, which is about 500 calories a day. And being always interested in numbers, I should have rumbled that straight away. It's like one of my biggest regrets of my life that I didn't just rumble that straight away, because I started off on this calorie controlled diet. And the first week you lose more than 2 pounds. So I was cutting back by 1,000 calories a day. I thought, which is what they said do, cut back by 1,000 calories a day and then you'll lose 2 pounds a week. That's the mantra. And you will still see that in magazines today. You'll still see it in Men's Health today, magazines that should know better. I mean, it's mad. So I started off and then, yes, sure enough, you lose 2 pounds one week and then maybe a pound and then maybe not very much. And then you have a few weeks when you don't lose anything at all. And what I should have realised was by the end of a year, so 52 weeks of doing that, I should have lost 104 pounds. And that should have been in fat alone, because that was the formula. It was for body fat. You should have lost more on top in terms of water, because the average human is about 60% water, and lean tissue. So actually, I should have died about 6 months earlier because I wasn't that heavy. I think, I'm only 5'2". I think when I started all of this, I was about 8.5 stone, but it would be what you'd call puppy fat, I guess, as a teenager. And I just thought, okay, I'll lose a bit. And I was really good at calorie counting, being liking numbers. It's like, I read a calorie book and that's it. It's all in my head straight away. It's like Bridget Jones's diary. There's a bit when her gay friend Tom says, how many calories in a banana? And she says 80. And then he says, oh, how many calories in a, sort of Oreo cookie or something? And she says, 42 or something like that. And it's like, how do you know this? And it's just like, I just do. I'm just a woman. I just do. And that was me. But it just doesn't work. It just doesn't hold. In a nutshell, why doesn't it hold? It doesn't hold because that formula assumes that the body is a cash machine for fat. So you've decided you want to lose 2 pounds. There you go. There's 2 pounds. Bob's your uncle. And then you want to lose another 2 pounds tomorrow. There you go. There's another 2 pounds. The body is so not going to do that. There are about 1 billion things going on by which the body will fight you doing that. So you've got to go back to the premise that the body does not want to lose weight. The body wants to do the exact opposite. The body wants to store fat because we would not still be here as a species if we had not evolved to be much better at storing fat than we are at losing fat. Which is also why exercise is nonsense, because the idea that caveman would have been, jumping around doing step aerobics or whatever, we have evolved to get food and conserve that energy. And if we couldn't do those two things, we'd be in really, really big trouble. So the body just adjusts. And if you know anyone who's suffered from anorexia, you will see very, very clearly the ways in which the body adjusts. So the body will make you cold. If you don't eat enough, the body just makes you cold straight away. Then you start growing fine hair all over your limbs because the body is actually trying to grow fur to keep you warm. Your reproductive system turns off. So somebody going through a sort of low-calorie diet as a teenager, your periods just stop. The body says, we do not need reproduction right now. You're not even looking after yourself. Then you've got things like the lymphatic drainage system just shuts off. So you can be losing weight but looking quite bloated and quite sort of puffy and quite unhealthy at the same time. The body doesn't fight infection. It doesn't repair. It doesn't build bone density. It doesn't build muscle. It just turns everything off just because you're not putting enough fuel in. So what do you do instead? You've got to work with your body, not work against it. So you work out, what does my body actually want? And this is one of the core talks that I do at conferences. I do a talk called What Should We Eat? And I start off by saying we need to go back to remembering why we eat. And we eat because there are certain nutrients that we need. And if we don't consume them, we either die, let's not mince our words, or we become very, very ill. So if you don't eat things with retinol, for example, vitamin A, you're going to get eye damage. If you don't have vitamin B12, you're going to go a bit loopy, really quite mentally imbalanced and unwell within about 3 weeks. So we need essential fats, we need complete protein, we need vitamins, and we need minerals, and we need all of those in a particular form. And short answer, where they are found in the form that we need them is animal foods. So what do we need to eat? Meat, fish, eggs, dairy products. You can also have vegetables, salads. If you're not worried about your weight or your metabolic health, you're fine going for sort of things like legumes, even though they're not indigenous to the UK. I would be wary of grains for most people because our modern grains are just too different to the grains that we evolved to eat. And many, many people will just find they feel a lot better off if they're not consuming wheat. What else does that leave? Nuts and seeds, again, they're okay if you're not trying to lose weight. If you are, they're not great for you. Fruit is one of the big controversial ones. It's essentially just sugar. As Gary Taub says, if you're overweight, sugar, fruit is not your friend. It's basically as the core of your diet, we should be eating meat, fish, eggs, dairy. Once you've got those in your daily diet, you've got what you need to keep your body happy. And then beyond that, it's a matter of choice, convenience, what works for you and your lifestyle.
Before we get onto the counting thing, because it kind of leads in with the carbohydrate as well as the calories, but especially lately, the vegetarian, but mostly the vegan diet, it's really being pushed quite heavily everywhere. I was a vegetarian for 10 years, a vegan for 4. Didn't feel very well on the vegan one, felt fine on the vegetarian one, as well as I think I felt at the time. But why do you think the vegetarian or the vegan diet in particular is so sexy at the moment and so pushed by mainstream media? And also, is it healthy for us to be on that kind of diet? And can you be healthy?
Yeah, no, that is such a good question, actually, because the answer is no, it's not healthy. But I do agree with you. It's being pushed from all angles. So there was a publication in The Lancet, which is a very esteemed medical journal, back in January 2019. And this group of researchers had put together something that they called the Lancet diet, the Eat Lancet diet. And it was kind of the diet for the world. And I analysed it at the time. It was so catastrophically nutritionally deficient. And it was quite happy if you didn't consume any animal products whatsoever. So it was kind of, oh, meat, you can have 0 to 14 grams. Well, 14 grams isn't even sort of the weight of half of one of your fingers. Ditto fish, 0 to 14 grams, eggs, 0 to whatever. I mean, it was nuts. But we're getting that pushed on a global scale. We're getting, our governments would be really quite happy if we didn't consume animal products. If you want to go and look at what the UK advice is, or go in your own country, if you're seeing this overseas, go and look at the US dietary guidelines or whatever, and just look at what your government is advising you. It's what I would call beige. It would be the things that I'm telling you not to eat. So it will be pasta and rice and grains and bread and potatoes and starchy carbohydrates. The single message in the UK under our healthy eating advice is base your meals on starchy foods. And that's how we fatten cattle. Why do we think it's going to be any different in fattening human beings? So, gosh, I mean, there are many layers to that question. I think there's actually quite a sinister agenda going on, which is, you can probably look at it if you're familiar with the attacks on farming at the moment. So if you've seen this No Farmers, No Food movement, if you're even more alert to global events and you've perhaps seen some of the problems that they're having with farming over in Holland and other countries, there seems to be a real movement at the moment against farming. And farmland is being taken up to put solar panels on and to put wind turbines on. We've got a growing population in the UK. We need to be food self-sufficient, and we're actually sabotaging our own food self-sufficiency. And our local food is things like lamb and beef and potatoes and root vegetables. It's not legumes and avocados and stuff that's coming over from Morocco and Chile and so on. So there's a number of different agendas that are going on. There's also a bit of a a bit of a sort of be kind of agenda. Oh, it's much kinder to the animal if I don't eat animal foods, and it's much kinder to the planet. And I've got a presentation online. If you want to go on my site, zoeharcombe.com, and go either on the videos tab or just put in, should we be vegan? And it will bring up a presentation. And like you, I was vegetarian for about 20 years and then vegan for a shorter period of time because I got quite sick quite quickly. And I go through the 3 arguments for being vegan. So the arguments go, it's healthier, and it's just absolutely not, because everything we need is found in animal foods. It's better for the animal. We'll do that in a second. It's better for the planet. So is it better for the animal? Well, no, because I could actually live on one animal for the rest of the year, and that would be one cow. And it's got all the nutrients I need. It would have enough calories for me. So one animal would die for me to live in a healthy way over the next year. Now, people who are vegan don't seem to realise what has died for their vegan food. And if you look at things like wheat and cereals, grains, whatever, they are mass produced at the moment. You've got combine harvesters the size of tennis courts that just sort of, sweep across the field, hoovering up the rabbits, the voles, the mice, the birds, the snails, the worms, domestic cats, unfortunately, if they live close to one of these rapeseed fields or something like that. And there's a paper on this, Field Deaths in Plant Agriculture. Billions of animals are killed each year in trying to cultivate these plant foods. So that one doesn't add up. And then this idea that the planet will be better off if we don't have cows out grazing the land because cows burp. I mean, without getting into the, what I was taught at school about the carbon cycle, which just doesn't seem to be taught anymore, because that is just, it's just nonsense. Cows are protecting the topsoil. If we took away all the cows in all the fields. There's nothing to grow the grasslands that then preserve that topsoil. And you'll notice if you go for, we live near each other, if you go for a walk in Wales around the fields, you'll notice the soil running off down the road every time it rains. That's gone into the drains, it's gone into the sea, it's never going to return to the fields. And topsoil that was once feet thick is now barely a few centimetres thick. And once that's gone, we can't grow anything. Or we have to then start growing our food upside down in greenhouses, which is already happening, which kind of brings us back to the, is there a bigger agenda going on at the moment? Because telling us to eat what they're telling us to eat is not healthy, it's not best for the planet, it's not best for anything.
It's funny you talked about the sort of morality side. I remember when I became vegetarian, it wasn't because I thought I would be healthier. I don't think I was any healthier being a vegetarian. I did it because I felt uncomfortable eating the animal.
Me too.
And even now, as somebody that still does eat meat, I have my meat cut up quite in tiny little sort of bites. So to kind of, almost pretend that it's still not meat that I'm eating, even though I am eating it. And I do think there is just a morality issue. I think people think that it's kinder to the earth, it's kinder to the environment, as you mentioned, it's kinder to the animal. And it's also just sexier. There's something about a nice, big, gorgeous bowl of salad or whatever it is that is easier to present to the world than a slab of steak.
It's so much quicker though, just to cook the things that you need. I like a big salad. I really like a big super salad. So tonight we'll have a steak and we'll have a big sort of super salad next to it. Probably put feta cheese on it just to to get some more of those animal food groups. But if I'm away, my husband really isn't that bothered about the salad. So if he goes skiing with the lads, quite a few of his lad friends are just not that interested in veg or salad. They go carnivore for the week. They basically live on bacon and eggs for breakfast. If they're up the mountain, they might grab a stew or something, or just a charcuterie platter, because you can get that so easily in Europe. So it will be ham, salamis, cheese. There's your platter. That's all they need. They come down from the mountain, have a massive steak and a bottle of red wine, and that's it. And they just don't bother. And it's so much quicker because the bit that's going to take him the time to prepare tonight is the big salad. Chopping it all up and making it all look nice. The steak takes, we've got an outdoor grill now. All weathers, he's outdoor cooking the steak. Doesn't matter what the weather is. And it'll be done in, a couple of minutes. So you save a lot of time.
So just bringing it back to the calorie, well, not the calorie, but the counting thing. So if counting calories isn't the way to go and not just to lose weight, but to maintain a healthy body and a healthy weight and to look good, if calories isn't the option, should we be counting the carbohydrate in our diet? And if so, what numbers do you think are good numbers that we should be consuming?
Yeah, good question. Where calories are helpful is to think of them as petrol for the body. So, you'd be able to work it out from various things, but let's say I'm an average woman. Okay, I'm quite small, but I'm, reasonably active. I don't do crazy sport or anything, but I walk and I try not to be sedentary. And so I would sort of have a rough idea in my head of I should be getting about 2,000 units of energy putting in, and they're called calories, but it's just I need 2,000 bits of petrol. And my husband probably needs, 2,500 bits of petrol. And if he's on a ski holiday, he probably needs about 4,000 bits of petrol. So it's not to count that, but just to have it in your mind of that's the kind of amount of fuel that you need to be putting in the body. Now, from experience, from research, and from, just observing a number of people, the more people try to eat less, the more that the body just adjusts. So I've actually worked with some people who've got to the point that they've been eating so little, there's almost nothing that they can eat without starting to regain weight. And it's not as if they're underweight and actually their body is right in trying to get them back to a normal weight. It might be somebody who's still in the overweight category, which would be a BMI of sort of 25 to nearly 30. But their body has just adjusted because the less that you put in, the more the body starts working against you, saying, okay, I need to batten down the hatches here because they're not putting enough in. So if you've got yourself into that situation, you've actually got to start building up a little bit, and it will feel really scary at first, which is why I always say to people, don't eat less, eat better. and start giving your body what it wants, and it will start working better with you. So you mustn't count what's going in, but you've got to start saying, right, I need to get in my diet on a regular basis those healthy things. So red meat is healthier than white meat, and oily fish is healthier than white fish, and the yolk is the healthiest part of the egg. And if you're having dairy products, it should be whole dairy, what they call full fat dairy, which is a joke. I mean, milk, full fat milk is 3.5% fat. How is that full fat milk? You know what I mean? It's nuts. This whole language is just sort of nuts. So start giving your body what it wants. Now, should you count carbohydrates? I don't like the idea of counting anything because I just think life's too short. But if you are going to count anything, then it should be carbohydrates. So if that's the only way that you think you can work, and if you don't count something, you're going to feel out of control around your food, because so many of us have unhealthy relationships with food, then okay, count carbohydrates. And the first thing that I would invite you to do, there's so many apps now that we just didn't have when we were younger. So put what you eat on a typical daily basis, maybe do a couple of different days. Most people, their diet is so similar every day, you wouldn't believe it. So put in a typical day and really be honest. You know, if once a week you're having a McDonald's or whatever, then you've got to allow for that in sort of your weekly intake, and look at what you're actually eating from a what we call macronutrient perspective. So there are 3 macronutrients, big nutrients, macronutrients. We know them as carbohydrate, protein, and fat. So the app will then tell you, this is how much carbohydrate you're eating, this is how much protein, and this is how much fat. And most people are eating too much carbohydrate and not enough fat, because that's what the government tells them to eat. So I'd say a lot of people in the UK, I mean, the UK public health dietary advice is trying to get us to have 55% of our intake in the form of carbohydrates. So for me, that would be 1,100 calories a day. And given that carbohydrates are approximately 400 calories per gram, you know, that's somewhere between 250 and 300 grams of carbohydrate on a daily basis. So 1 gram of carbohydrate being 4 calories. If I let you into another little secret factoid, in our bodies at the moment, both you and me, we have 1 teaspoon of glucose in our entire body. That is 4 grams of glucose, 1 teaspoon of glucose. That's basically like a gram of carbohydrate. 4 grams of carbohydrate, because glucose will approximate to carbohydrates. It's approximately 16 calories in the body. And our government wants us to be putting in about 1,100 calories of carbohydrate on a daily basis. Now, every time the body goes above that 4 grams of glucose, the body has this incredible mechanism where it calls upon a organ in the body called the pancreas, and it will say, pancreas, wake up, we've got a sugar emergency, 20 grams have just gone in, the person's just eaten a banana, go and get that glucose out of the bloodstream, and that's what the body then does. Now, 300 grams of carbohydrate on a daily basis, it's only a matter of time before the body says, right, enough. I'm obese, I'm type 2 diabetic, I've got inflammatory whatever condition, I've got non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, I'm out. You give me the wrong food for too long, the wrong fuel. I'm a petrol car, you keep putting diesel in, just can't cope with it anymore. I'm out. So there's a part of me that thinks if you're putting in any more than 100 grams of carbohydrate on a daily basis, you are giving your body way too much to deal with on a regular basis. And another thing is, we should not be putting our food in too often, because every time you put anything into your body that's got carbohydrate, fat, or protein, basically any calorie, the body has got to deal with it. It's just got to deal with it, particularly carbohydrate. It's got to get that glucose out of the bloodstream. So we don't respect our bodies enough. And again, governments, dietitians say graze, eat little and often, keep your blood glucose topped up. I mean, that is that's probably the one that makes me the most angry of all the outrageous things that so-called health experts say. Keep your blood glucose topped up. Your body is doing that. It is designed to do that. Left alone, it will keep you at 4 grams of glucose perfectly all day long, all of your life. And we muck it up by saying, oh, we'll give it cereal and toast and orange juice and some fruit for breakfast. It's like, whoa, that's more than I used to get in a week. And then it will say, oh, have a coffee mid-morning, or go to Starbucks and have a muffin and have a low-fat latte. And then lunchtime, have a sandwich, have some crisps. It's a meal deal. You don't want to miss out on the meal deal. You're going to be hungry late afternoon because your blood sugar is all over the place. Oh, I need to make it through the day. I've got that 4 o'clock slump. You eat something else, you go home, you snack on something while you're getting dinner ready. You have dinner, you sit in front of Netflix, and then you just eat. You don't even know what you ate because you were watching the Netflix series. And that's our typical day.
Look
And
at you describing my diet.
we can't do that and stay healthy. So ideally, don't eat more than 3 times a day. Don't put stuff in your mouth other than water or herbal tea more than 3 times a day, ideally.
Can I quickly touch upon what you were talking about briefly earlier about saying so steak is better than white meat and things like that? You're talking from a purely nutritional value,
Yeah.
right? So like liver, which I still haven't got around to that. It's just from a nutritional point of view. So
Yeah.
that's all you're interested in, I take it. What
Yeah.
gives you the biggest bang for your buck?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have spreadsheets that I've had for absolutely years, nutrition databases. There used to be a brilliant one called nutritiondata.com, and then it got taken over by some magazine. There are other ones, but I've got most of the data already anyway. We did a complete download dump of the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, all foods database. So I'm not bothered about fake food because I don't eat fake food. Nobody should be eating fake food. So I don't bother with that. So I've got all the staples in my spreadsheet. And you're right, liver, you are familiar with my work, because liver, I hate it as well. It is the single most nutritious food on the planet. So you can put in liver, you can put in red meat, you can put in oily fish, sardines, whatever. And ideally put them all in before they've been cooked, because cooking changes everything. If you have your steak well done, you lose more water than if you have it rare. So go by 100 grams or 100 calories. You can do it 2 ways. I always go 100 grams and then line them up. And it's just then it falls out. What do we need? We need the essential fats. We need complete protein. And your nutrition database will tell you what proportion of essential fats are in this product, what's the complete protein score for this product, what is the intake of copper and zinc and manganese and iron and all the rest of it. And you just look at it, and then it's a spreadsheet. And then you go across the spreadsheet and say, okay, what's the winner for each of these things? So what's the winner for retinol? Liver. What's the winner for the B vitamins? Liver. This is hilarious. If you compare liver and an apple, a liver will even win for vitamin C. Who knew that vitamin C is in liver? It's also in the thymus gland. So this is why people who are carnivore, like Ken Berry or Sean Baker or Anthony Chaffee, they don't need to eat any vegetable foods to get even vitamin C, because it's in those animal foods. So it's just looking at all of those. If I put in red meat and then I put in chicken, red meat just wins on virtually everything. And then I also take into account the fact that red meat from beef and ruminants, as we call them, so that would be beef, sheep, goats, deer are also ruminants. Those animals, because of the way that they consume the grass and regurgitate the grass and live in symbiosis with the land, they're protecting topsoil. So they're good animals to eat. Chickens, not so much. They can live in a farmyard, they can scavenge on anything, they can live on the same land as the cows, but they're not giving back to the land in the way that the cows are. Oily fish compared to white fish, there's just no contest. And yes, it's higher in calories, oily fish. Red meat tends to be higher, it's certainly higher in calories than skinless chicken breasts. The egg yolk is higher in calories than the egg white. That should be another sign that nature is not trying to get you to go low calorie. Nature has put the nutrients in the foods that it actually wants you to eat.
Can I ask you what your average day looks like in terms of the foods that you consume? Because I know that will be one of the comments that I will get.
What does Zoe eat?
Yeah, because I think people find it fascinating when you have dietitians or just people who are so fascinated with nutrition, what their daily diet looks like.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So hubby and I start off quite differently. Because I'm a veggie background, I really find it difficult to have bacon and eggs in the morning. And I'm sat next to him having bacon and eggs. But that's not for me. I actually like fruit. I am aware that every time I eat fruit, I could be eating something healthier. But my breakfast will have some fruit, apples from the garden at the moment because we're still getting some. So it would ideally be fruit in season. Berries, I've been freezing blackberries all autumn because it's been amazing. Greek yogurt, high fat Greek yogurt, whole milk from the local farm. So it's a good few hundred calories of dairy products and some fruit. And some of that milk is in an absolutely massive cappuccino. I think I have about a third of a litre of milk in my latte in the morning. Now I do break the rule of eating only 3 times a day because we tend to get up really early. So mid-morning I will have dark chocolate or something with dark chocolate. Quite often I'll make a dark chocolate mousse, which is basically melted dark chocolate, cream, eggs, dash of vanilla, dash of coffee, dash of rum kind of thing. Again, a lot of calories if you were worried about calories, but a good amount of fat, protein, and very low in carbohydrate. And I'm using my brain all day long. So, I find I need a bit of fuel. Lunch could be anything, but it's going to be quite low in carbohydrates. So it could be eggs scrambled in butter, could be leftovers, it could be cold meats, it could be a plate of cheese. People who count calories will know that cheese adds up really quickly on calories. But to me, I just see it as fuel. Lunch, I want something in 5 minutes. I don't want to be breaking away from my work. Sometimes my hubby even brings it to my desk and then I'll just sit away from my desk. I will never eat in front of a screen. You will not know that you've eaten. Don't ever do that. It's a really simple, quick rule to make sure you don't overeat. Never, never, never. Phone, television, computer, never eat in front of a screen. So I sit away from the screen. It might just be more yogurt, a massive bowl of Greek yogurt again with some cheese, but just some fat protein. It's going to keep my blood sugar level nice and even. It's not calling upon my body to go and take sugar out or whatever. That is then usually fine. We eat early in the evening for the evening meal, so we'll be having dinner 4:30 if we're dining with friends, or we go out for dinner. It's going to be 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever they do. But more and more, if people come to the house and we say, look, we're having an early supper, and they'll come over for say 5:30, which is a little bit late for us but quite a bit early for them, they love it. And then people actually, you find they change, they're like, this stops me snacking when actually I'm hungry and I've come in from work, and it stops that sort of, all this bad eating in the evening, all the rest of it. So it's really easy to get into early eating, trust me, especially if you work at home. And that will be homemade burgers. I think we're having tonight. So just mince. I got some mince from the farm shop today. So Andy will turn those into burgers with some spices, salt and pepper, nothing else. So you've got none of the fillers that you get in burgers, like the maltodextrin and the wheat and the rusks and the sugar and all the rest of it. Will be steak. We quite often have steak. Or it will be a pork joint with crackling or roast lamb, but it's red meat, basically. Occasionally it's oily fish. If we're away on holiday, I love fish, so I will eat the oily fish. If I want oily fish, Andy will do it for me. But just to be nice to him, it's like, look, do a ruminant, do something that's going to help the land, fill us up. And that will be, as I say, with a super salad or with some stir-fry vegetables or just with some boiled local vegetables. We don't have starches with it. You just don't need it. Your plate has got meat and vegetables or meat and salad on it. There's no room on the plate for starches, and I know that they're not bringing anything to the party. I've got all that I need in the meat, and then the salad is because I like the crunch and I like how it looks. And then for dessert, it might be a platter of cheese, it might be cream and berries, it might be yogurt, it might be dark chocolate, it might be chocolate mousse, it might be nothing, but it's all, what I don't eat. Apart from the dark chocolate, I don't eat processed food. I very, very rarely eat rice, potatoes, pasta. If I'm out, I'll eat what's put in front of me. But I just rarely eat any of that. Legumes, it might be that we're going out for dinner tomorrow night and the people make a fantastic chili, which will have kidney beans in it. They also make a brilliant lamb tagine, which I think has got lentils in it, maybe chickpeas, stuff that goes into that kind of thing. I'm going to eat, not a problem at all. But we wouldn't use that to cook on a regular basis. So we really do base our meals around animal foods, meat, fish, eggs, and full fat dairy.
And just to finish off, and it's just, I'm sorry about the schizophrenic nature of jumping around, but with regards to the carbohydrate, I know what you said earlier on, about 100, maybe less. Just touching briefly on the fiber aspect of a low carbohydrate diet. So here in the UK, I think is it 25 or 35 grams they recommend a day. Do you know where they got that number from? And do we genuinely need fiber in our diets from a
Um,
health?
Yeah, I do know where they got that number from. Again, if you go on my website, zoeharcombe.com, and put in fiber video in the search box, I did a fiber video on this, and I traced back where it came from. And I can't remember it off the top of my head now, but it's just got no evidence base whatsoever. They really have plucked all of these numbers out of the air. 5 a day is a number plucked out of the air. Only have 14 alcohol units if you're a woman, or 21 if you're a man. They're all plucked out of the air. This is all just nonsense. There is no science behind this whatsoever. In brief, what actually is fiber? So when you sort of go through, and I do this in the presentation, so I go through what I call Carbohydrates 101. So there are what we call single sugars. So those would be, see if I can remember it, fructose, glucose, and galactose. Then we have what we call sort of disaccharides, double sugars. And the easiest one to use as an example is sucrose, which is table sugar. It's what you find in the sugar bowl. And that's 1 molecule of fructose and 1 molecule of glucose. So you kind of go through the Carbohydrates 101. Then you get to things called polysaccharides, many sugars. And fiber is a many sugar. But there are many sugars that we can digest, which would be things like porridge oats or bran. How digestible bran is very debatable, but there would be sort of many sugars that we can digest. And then the many sugars that we can't digest is actually the definition of fiber. So fiber is indigestible polysaccharides, many sugars that we can't digest. Now, does that sound like something that we should be eating? The body can't even digest it. We absolutely do not need fiber. We don't need carbohydrate. I mean, I'm not saying don't eat carbohydrate, because it's actually quite enjoyable and all the rest of it. But if none of us ate a single gram of carbohydrate between now and the day we die, nothing untoward would happen, provided that we got the right foods that we do need, the animal foods. And because fiber is a subset of carbohydrate, if you don't need carbohydrate, you just absolutely do not need fiber. We just don't need it. So that, the 30 grams is just complete and utter nonsense. I'm absolutely convinced it's behind, we have an explosion in bowel problems, irritable bowel syndrome, discomfort, wind, constipation, diarrhea. One of the main things that takes people into the doctor is just extreme bowel discomfort. That's because you're trying to put into your body stuff that it can't digest on a daily basis. And what most people found, in fact, there was a brilliant study, and I mentioned this in the fiber presentation. There was a great study over in the Far East where I think they had about 60 or 70 people who had the most extreme bowel disorders that you could find. I mean, to the point of it just had completely stopped them being able to live a normal life. So they ticked all the boxes on the discomfort, pain, constipation, diarrhea, the whole lot. So the study took them off all fibrous food. So basically you're down to a carnivore diet. So you're down to meat, fish, eggs and dairy. And then they got them to assess how they felt, and they felt amazing. Like everything had cleared up. And then they said to them, okay, do you want to go back to eating fiber? And almost everyone didn't go back to eating fiber. So if anyone is feeling discomfort at the moment with their bowels or digestive system, or you go out for dinner, so you put on your favourite outfit and you've got a nice belt on and you're feeling good, and you go out for dinner and then you start feeling the belt pinch and you start feeling uncomfortable, and then you take the belt off when you get home and you look 9 months pregnant. That shouldn't happen. I never have that. I never have that. I can go out wearing whatever I want to wear. Doesn't matter how big a meal I eat. I'm not going to end up feeling like that, so long as I'm in control of what I'm going to eat. If somebody serves me lasagna, all bets are off. I know I'm going to bloat and feel uncomfortable. But if I'm in a restaurant and I can just choose steak, salad, and then maybe a little chocolate pot for pudding or whatever, I know I'm going to be fine. We're putting up with stuff that we just shouldn't put up with. And then just quickly, I realised I didn't answer one part of that carb question earlier, which is how low might we want to go? And I'm just saying, I just can't see that anyone needs more than 100 grams. If you really want to start losing weight quite quickly. And if you wanted to use those fat jabs to get you into a dietary pattern that you would then be able to sustain, honestly, the lower that you can go in carbohydrate, the better. So there is, the body can either fuel on things like carbohydrate or fat. What you want is for the body to be fueling on body fat. So the best way to get the body into the state where it's going to fuel on your body fat is a state that we call ketosis. And that word is associated with something that we call the keto diet, which people might have heard of. And it varies for different people. So I'm at around, 100 grams of carbohydrate a day. And if I go up and see one of my girlfriends who just loves testing ketones all the time, she tests me late afternoon. I've got reasonable ketone levels, even on that kind of carbohydrate intake. But I got another friend in the nutrition world who will aim to get to no more than 50 grams of carbohydrate a day. And she's still not in ketosis at that level. You can get these things now on Amazon. You can get these little kits. The starter kit is probably about £60, so it's not cheap, but Christmas is coming up, and it will enable you to test your glucose and test your ketones. And if you really have got some body fat to lose and you're like, right, I'm going to do it for once and for all, it's so motivational to get one of these little kits and to realize that actually when you start off, your blood glucose is quite high. You know, you want it to be 4 something, and you're testing and it's like, it's 5 or maybe even 6 or maybe even 7. You know, you're heading into type 2 diabetes territory. So cut the carbs, cut them down, maybe even count carbs and try to go under 50 grams a day. I can tell you 50 grams a day, you'll even be avoiding milk, because my cappuccino in the morning adds up to about 15 grams of carb. You'll even be avoiding that. But then you start testing your ketones at the same time. You start seeing your ketones going up and your glucose going down, and you will see the results on the scales. So if you're type 2 diabetic already and you know you need to be moving away from that, then go low in carbohydrate, maybe even start thinking of going on a keto diet. And obviously that's not advice, because I can't give medical advice, but that's from a research perspective, from experience of having worked in this field and written in this field and published papers in this field and having a PhD in public health and nutrition over the last 20 years or so.
Thank you so much. I think just to end, so where can people find you? I'll give all the information anyway, but if you could just say, because I personally thinking, I know the comment section is going to be absolutely mental. No doubt I'm going to be reaching back out to you for another interview on very specific topics. But if you just say where they could reach you, that would be great.
I noticed my name. My hubby set this up, didn't he? And he hasn't put my name on the thing, so it's just my name, Zoe Harcombe, which is just ZoeHarcombe. So on X, I'm at Zoe Harcombe. My website is zoeharcombe.com. There's quite a lot on OpenView, but that's kind of how I put steak on the table. So there is this Monday note, and there are the Monday note sort of behind paywalls. There's loads of videos there's a great video on calories, actually. There's video on vegans. There's a video on dietary fat. There's a video on fiber. There's some good videos out there that will talk you through more of this kind of stuff. And good luck with the comments. The last one I did, people were quite upset when I said fruit is not all that. It's kind of just sugar and water. And everyone thinks that fruit is so healthy.
I'm looking forward to the comments. And also just in case, Zoe has some amazing books on nutrition and diet as well, and amazing ones.
Yeah, people don't read books anymore, do they? We've got an attention span of 2 minutes. Like, you're on an Instagram video. I don't do Instagram or TikTok or anything like that, but I watch my niece on it, and she's watching a TikTok video, and it's more than 20 seconds. She's out. She's moved on. I'm like, how do teachers teach anyone nowadays? Nobody can concentrate for more than 1 minute.
It's a lot, trust me. As somebody who does the whole social media thing, I still find the short form content, like you were speaking of, horrific, and I do not understand it, but I'm old, so there you go.
You're not old. There you go.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Please subscribe, because it helps me pretend that this is a real job.